streaming. Come on, Twitch. Hooray, we're streaming. Alright, so I'll go ahead and tell the world. Streaming, game dev, more hair shader nonsense. I was thinking about switching back to a different part of the game, like, say, stories or spaceships. But there's a couple of reasons why I'm not going to do that. One of the biggest reasons is because since I've been doing hair shaders and hair stuff, I'm sort of on a roll, even though it's a roll of 2 hours a week. So I think it's useful for me to keep that up. You know, it's one of those things where once you start going off and doing other things, it takes quite a bit of effort to get back into the swing. So now we're going to go ahead and do some more hair shader stuff. Just pull some nonsense up here, take a look around, everything seems fine. Don't think I've got any viewers, and that's great. So here we've got the scene. Oh, I might have to reboot the machine, but not today. So this is with the hair shader that I bought on the asset store for $6. And it has a couple of problems, but let's go ahead and get rid of the hat for a second here. But the biggest problem is that it doesn't look like hair. So part of that is due to the hair shader, and part of that is due to the hair I created, right? And the question is, do I want to aim for better hair modeling, or do I want to create my own shader, or what? I could create my own shader, but I think what we want to do is try some more hair stuff that's not shader based, just to give it a shot first. Here's the hair shader that we're using, and you can see that I've got it set to a very, very dark shade. One of the problems I do have with this hair shader is that when I brighten it up to a lighter blonde color, which is actually the sort of color that it was when as the default. This is a copied version of a lighter shader. Once I do that, it really becomes obvious that the hair is not really hair. So we're going to try and create another hair shape today. Try a couple of different things. First thing we're going to want to do, though, is just test out and see whether or not this hair shader can be replaced with a different material. And see what's up with that. So I got allergies coming out my yin-yang. So if my voice is a little bit raw, and because I'm moving slowly, it's because my tears are welling up in my blood red eyes. So we are struggling here to try and get things done. So I was using this Dithered Alpha Blonde. This is the shader, right? Obviously, it's with a different material, a different color there. But if we switch over to a different color, like say this dark brown, if we were to duplicate this dark brown and use this duplicated one, we could modify it to use the correct alphas that we're using here. And that would be the fine, I think. Is it called fine? Yeah. So I can't remember which of these it is, whether it's the fine inverted or the fine straight up. Oh, it's just this one. That's fine. Haha, get it? So that does seem backwards. There we are. That was the problem. So now what we've got is some dark brown hair that has the same layout as our previous hair that we were using, and you can see just how terrible it looks. And this is why I'm thinking of building my own hair shader, because this doesn't look like hair. And it could be that that's somehow the fault of the mesh, but I don't think so. This is a fairly typical mesh. One of the things that could be wrong is, of course, that I am using UV maps that go together in a way that the hair shader might not like. If I made my own shader, I would be able to fix that part, but you can see that what we've got is really, really bright sheen that spreads a long way across the hair surface. Now we can change that color somewhat, but unfortunately it's not one of these highlights. It's entirely based around this initial set. So because of that, it's quite hard for us to decrease the power of this setup, because the bump power has nothing to do with it. If we bring down the metallicity, we can reduce the amount of shine it's got, but at the same time, it doesn't actually change the power, how condensed the shine is. So if I was going to create my own thing, I would probably create a custom light map that would work with that. Yeah, I'm trying to think about what makes sense, and I think that it's hard for me to tell what sort of thing I should do, because it's also when you stare at hair for a while, you start to lose track of what actually looks like real hair, and you're like, oh, we'll just do hair, and it's like, oh, well, I have no idea if this looks good anymore because I've been doing it for too long. So here you can see a setup that has orange hair called golden. It's very, very obviously orange. But this sheen here is close to right. That's kind of what I want. That is the sheen I want. The problem is this sheen here, which is the primary lighting sheen. That's the sheen that you get from ordinary lighting. So the actual highlight sheen is good. This sheen here is good. It's the default sheen that looks like shit. And I don't think there's any way for me to reduce that. I don't see any signs that it can be reduced. No. It's just stuck there. That's a shame. So let's go ahead and just try a couple of our own shaders, just to play around a little bit and see what we can do. We've got a set of shaders that we're already using, or we can already use rather. Down here under hair, we've got this hair test, which uses the hair shader, but that's not a shader that's actually hair. We're going to drop the hair test on the head, and I'll show you, rather than being hair, it's tangent space. See? And you can see that we've got tangent space errors on this particular head, but they're not so bad that they're unbelievable. There's just a little bit here and there, so I think it'll be fine. I think that's as close to correct as we're going to get. Here's the shader for that. Oop, that's not going to work. God damn it. Come on. There it is. Got it. Jesus. There's like one pixel that you can click on. Clicking on anywhere else will do something else. So this is what it's set up for, and obviously calling it hair is wrong. This is tangent space. And we're just going to go ahead and save that. But we're going to want to go over to it. Can I tell it to select that shader? Yeah, there it is. There we go. And now we're going to want to duplicate that and create a new hair shader that actually does what we want it to do. So let's go ahead and open this in the shader editor. And we'll go back into the hair material we're using and switch it over from tangent space to hair. Now that I'm thinking about it, it might have been bright to do that in the other order. Oh, I haven't named it yet. Long, beautiful hair. Where was it? There we are. So now that we've got that going, we can actually take a look at this shader and get it to work. Right now, what we're doing is we are pumping the hair tangent space straight into the custom lighting. We're changing it from being -1 to 1 to being 0 to 1, but that's the only thing we're really doing. So if we take this vertex tangent and then we also take the object space light direction, in theory, a dot product will produce something useful. But this is something I'm not so sure about. This is also light direction. It's not normalized, so it may also include light amount. It's light attenuation. I think that's a different topic. Light color. Yeah, what is light attenuation? Contains light attenuation. Unity's light and shadow information with directional lights returns white and black areas where the object is directly or later in shadow. Okay, so this will help with the shadow setup there. It'll contain smooth fall-off information for light that changes according to range setting. This should only be used with custom lighting. That's fine. There's also a light color. There we are. So the light color contains the intensity that we're looking for. And what they recommend is multiplying them together so that you get the color times the thing here. But I don't know whether or not light intensity is already modified. Yeah. So returns the light intensity. Okay, so that in fact does not diminish as location changes. I think. Yeah, so that's fun. So we're going to go ahead and do that multiplication there. So now we've got this and this. What we're going to want to do first things first, light attenuation and light color will determine the basic light value, but I don't believe that that will take into account things like normal. So if we do this, yeah, it's turned into this nonsense here. Because the light attenuation should be 1 as far as I know, because these lights don't have ranges. They are just the color of the light. But then if we take the normal, so the question is the light direction is in object space. Right now we're using the tangent. If we take the normal from the vertex, here we have it, this, and then we multiply here, in theory, that will produce a normal-ish, yeah, very, very basic setup. As you can see, what we've got is hair that has been lit according to the normal value. But because the light is set up to be oversaturated, I believe that it has an intensity higher than 1. The result is, oh, it's exactly 1. Yeah, so if I bring the light down, you can see how it is a soft fall off to about 90 degrees off of the light, at which point it turns into a strong fall off. But if we try that, then what we get is something that's understandable. The question is what we get if we do this. Okay, not what I expected. So we get garbage. Let's go ahead and just quickly take a look around a little bit. There's a spelling error in this. So what these folks are recommending is, instead of doing the dot product of the normal and H, which they don't explain, a specular NH term, I don't know what H is, but it's not the light direction, is it? Specular NH. Normalize light direction plus view direction. Well, that's fascinating, right? Well, let's go ahead and do that then. Let's go ahead and pull off the light direction plus the view direction. That should be something that we can do. So if we bring this back in, here we've got the light direction. Let's see if we can get the view direction. View direction. It's in world space. Can we get the view direction not in world space? In tangent space. Well, that seems like that would be perfect, right? But neither of those is in object space. What's tangent space? That's new to me. Tangent space. I have a feeling this will be a big help if I can figure out what the hell it is. Well, let's go ahead and map tangent space to the custom lighting and see what the heck tangent space is. So this is tangent space, and as you can see, as I move around, the shades of the colors change. So this is the view direction in tangent space, and what I can see is that there's no red over here, and then there's plenty of red over here. So that means that red is the x-coordinate of tangent space. And green would be the z-coordinate. And blue would be... I'm not sure. Any way we cut it, it's clearly related to where the camera is. So if I can transform, I don't know how I would transform this into something useful, but we'll go ahead and get started by doing exactly what they say we should, which is to add the view direction to the light direction. Only problem is that the light direction is in object space, not tangent space. If we take a look at the other things here, here's a world to tangent matrix. We could transform the light into tangent space, or we could go the other way and transform the view direction into object space. Or we could use world space for everything. Let's go ahead and... no, don't open some random shit up. I'm just trying to get back the side window. There we are. This is one of those things where it's not complicated, except that you don't have all the pieces you need. The Relin says hello. So, for example, in this case, all I really want to do is get this setup that they recommend for their setup, which is the dot product of the tangent and h. H is, in this case, presumably the light direction plus the view direction. But I don't know whether the light direction is in world space, object space, or tangent space, and the same with the view direction. Presumably they both have to be in the same space, or else it won't work. We'll go ahead and just add these together and see what we get, just to try it on for size. So for starters, we've got the vertex normal. We're just going to move that out of the way. We don't need it. We've got the light color, the light attenuation, these things. We'll stick them all down here. We don't need them for the moment either. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to add together the object space light direction and the view direction in tangent space. And I don't think that's going to work out for us. Then we're going to normalize it. And now that's going to create something that may be able to replace that value. Let's just see what happens and go from there here and see what's up. So I actually don't see any difference. Oh, that's right. I forgot to actually move it over into custom lighting. That should help it. All right, so here what we've got is something that does change as we move the camera around, but it's clearly not what I want it to be. That's probably because these things are in different spaces, maybe. But also, the actual thing we're looking for is 1 minus blah, 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 blah. We might as well set up that 1 minus while we're doing this shit. So just check on my sets there. So what we're actually going to be doing is the square root of 1 minus the square of that. So square root 1 minus the square. There we are. So we take the square, and you can actually see this. I don't want to drag this onto my screen, but I'm following something that's on the other page here, and it's like the square root of 1 minus the square, and so that's what we've got here. It looks backwards, but it's definitely not. The only problem is that we don't have the power set up correctly, so we'll just link that back in there. And you can see that that is pure, unadulterated nonsense. It doesn't do anything even vaguely correct. So that's clearly not what we want. Let's go ahead and take these and put them into world space here. Let's take light direction. There we are. Now that we're using world space light direction and world space view direction, we can get those to be combined. But then we're using the vertex tangent, and that's in... Oh, well, maybe the problem with the vertex tangent is that it's not x, y, z, w. No, that's not it. So the problem here is that the vertex tangent is in object space. So we've added together some world space stuff, and now we need to get our world space vertex tangent. If we take a look, there is no such thing as a world space vertex tangent. There is a world tangent, and that might be the same thing. Per pixel world tangent. I'm not sure if that's compatible. Let's take a look. We'll find out. The problem is I actually don't know whether any of this is compatible. The color of these blocks implies what phase of the shader you're supposed to use them in. And I am not convinced that we can combine all of these in the way we're currently using them. I guess we'll find out. That doesn't seem to actually have changed anything. I see 0 difference. Do you see any differences? I don't see any. Well, what we can do is we can just bring this straight over into custom lighting. Yeah, so that definitely changed it. And here you can see that what we've got is the lights are not behaving in any way that makes sense. The lighting is just total nonsense. I think that we're chasing a tree here. Chasing a tree, chasing our own tail here. So if this is not in the equation, we'll just actually delete that. So if this is H, the normalized world space light plus view direction, and I'm supposed to normally do a dot product between the normal. Let's try that. There's the world normal. Yeah, so that works. And you can see that it is combining the light, which is right there, as you can see. It's combining the light with our view direction in a way that creates an unusual characteristic. And that is sort of what we want. But then the idea is that we use tangent space instead. You know what? I don't know if I can do this with the amount of knowledge I've got. I thought it was going to be fairly straightforward because I've got the instructions here. But unfortunately for us, the instructions are half-assed. And they keep calling their scatter function sine. It's not sine, it's a scatter function. But it could be that they mean to apply a sine value, because if we're looking to get the sheen, then we want this gray ridge, right? Well, let's try it. So sine is unfortunately a value that didn't change jack shit. It's different, so I can show you what it looks like when it's not sine. It's just like that, see? But normally what sine would do would be to take in a value and give you a different value from 0 to 1. And sine is best at 90 degrees, which means that in theory, taking the sine of a dot product is meaningless. What we could do is get the range of the dot product that's between 0.4 and 0.6 or something. But this feels like all I'm doing is struggling is because they've got this ridiculous error in their system, and they're not explaining anything. The closest they've got is they have actually a piece of code for shifting the normal, and it is super, super basic. That's the part I didn't need code for. We do strand specular lighting using half-angle vectors. Using reflection vectors and view vector would make the shader a little more complicated. Two highlights with different colors, specular exponents, and slightly shifted canvas tangents modulate the secondary highlight with a noise texture. So in this case, what we're doing is we're taking in a strand specular with T, V, L, and an exponent. I'm not sure what all of those values are. But since H is the normal of L plus V, we can assume that L and V are the lighting and view vector. And then the dot of T and H is also taken, and then the sine. Okay, so let's just go ahead and replicate this code and see whether or not we can get it to work. Just check and see if there's been any comp. Oh, Supli said, hello, what are you trying to do exactly? Sorry if I'm responding a little bit poorly. I've only got 2 screens, and so I'm trying to do this as well as look at a tutorial. I'm trying to create a hair shader because the hair shader I bought for $6 glows in the dark. So it looks okay for, brown hair, and every other color it doesn't look okay for. So what we're doing is we're following a set of instructions that have numerous spelling mistakes and oversimplifications. So this here is H. So then we also want to take the dot of a couple of values. So let's just take these here, and let's move these 4. There we are. So H is this. Too bad I can't tag these, right? Is there a comment? No. Is there a note? No. What a pain in the ass. There should always be the option to add comments and notes. It's fine. I'll just orient them in exactly the same way they're oriented in the code. So what we've got here is the dot product of T and H. So that would be the world tangent, or that's this guy, and H. So that's our second value. We can get rid of that guy for now. And sine down here, sine of TH equals, it's not even a sine. Oh, God, they call it sine even in their code. It's not a sine. It's a scatter function. Anyway, this is the thing they call sine th. This. It's the square root of 1 minus dot th times dot th. Okay. So then the direct attenuation is then smooth stepped from -1 to 1 according to dot th. I don't know why they're redoing dot th. They already stored it. Ugh, these folks did not do a bang-up job. I've looked for other tutorials, and I can't find any that are really any good. So here's our smooth step. Our minimum is going to be... If you know of a good hair shader tutorial, give it up to me, because the only ones I can find are shitty. Oh, I can just set it. That's easier. So here's the smooth step. It's the square root. It's not the square root. It's this guy. Move color a little bit more here. So we get the smooth step of the dot th, and then the final value is this times power. So we take the power of an arbitrary exponent, sine th, which is this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then that. And it's garbage. It looks literally the same as what we were doing before. Maybe it's because the power exponent is 0. Okay, so let's bring the exponent way up. But you can see that it's not creating anything that looks like hair by any means. So L and V and T must be tangent. Are they just using it in different spaces than I am? Or is this not working because these are in the wrong part of the shader, and so it can't be used correctly during this time? They actually have like a full a full code setup which in theory I could duplicate by just actually coding it. But I'm not real confident about that. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. It's been a while since I've tried to code an actual setup. If we go in here and we... I think we can tell it to actually let us open it in code here. There we are. So here is the code that it's generating for this. And the problem is that I've got to translate it from whatever language that this paper is using and the one that Unity uses for its shaders. And I'm not real confident about that. It includes a function that takes in a bunch of values, and I can't remember whether or not those values come predefined or not. I would have to ask somebody. So this is where it would probably be, but here you have to set up what you're trying to accomplish. Here's the half-3 view direction. They call it a view vector in theirs. That's probably fine. Unity GI, I don't know what that is. And this in-out surface output custom lighting, this in theory contains all of the other arguments. So if we go up to where that's defined, here it is. We got the albedo, the normal, the emission, the metallic, we don't care about any of these. The occlusion, there we are. The alpha, and the surface input. What we don't have is the light vector. Does GI contain the light vector? It must, right? World light direction equals normalize unity space ASE. Okay, so they actually pull it in via a complicated function rather than as an argument. That's fine, I guess. We get the view vector in here too somewhere. Well, you know what we can do? We can copy this and try to edit it and make it work. I'm really curious about whether or not it's even theoretically possible to make this work. Mr. Supley says, what's the tutorial you're looking at? It's this guy. I'll put it in chat. Sorry if you guys have been waiting for that for a while now. So I've tried looking for other tutorials, but I can't find any that are actually useful for game rendering. If you know of any, then please hook me up, because that is a very, very flawed tutorial they're giving. Maybe it's less flawed if you are like already super familiar with everything, but I'm not. So here's hair test. That's not what I wanted to do. Deleted. Here is the hair test shader, right? Where was the hair test shader? Here it is. All right, so we're going to call this hair manual. And then down here in our lighting standards, custom lighting, what we're going to try and do is set up the elements that we need for our inputs, and then we'll just do some of the most basic elements. So let's just go ahead and start a new setup here entirely, and all of this stuff down there is later, stop fucking bothering me, Jesus. All of this stuff down here is going to be commented out. It's really hard to do work when every 15 seconds your fucking IDE pops up and says, hey, look, a distraction. It's like the worst version of Clippy. It looks like you're trying to write a letter. Would you like to download a new version of Microsoft Windows instead? So for this, they're giving us a saturated lerp. I actually don't know whether we've got a saturate. We don't have a saturate. We can do the lerp without needing to saturate, though. Dot normal and light vector. So the question is, how do we get the normal and the light vector? Well, we can get them via a couple of custom basic setups here. If we look down here, we're already pulling these values in. So here is the world world light direction right here, and we'll just put that in up here. And then we can get the diffuse value out of that light vector. Why is it a float 3? That's what the saturate does. The saturate turns it into a color. And then they want to multiply it by the color of the light, which is not something I care about right now. So we're going to want to create dot result 33 equals normalize temp cast 1. Okay, so apparently it doesn't mind if I do it like that. Well, let's try it. So C is a half 4. And then down here we can say C.RGB equals diffuse. I know we can say that because that's how they said it and it worked. C.A equals that. That. So we'll go ahead and put those after the light vector. All right, let's save that and then go in here and see whether or not that happens. Look at that, it's all barfy. No matching one parameter function, undeclared identifier, world pause. So let's find the world pause. There it is. Expected one of. Okay, so I don't say F. This isn't one of the Fs. Here is the undeclared identifier I. Undeclared identifier normal. Oh, there it is. So, I know that's here. I named it something on my own. World normal vector. World tangent. World tangent. Oh, you know what? We don't use the normal in the original, so it's not showing up here. I don't know how to get it. But it's one of the things that's easy to get. There it is. So it's in the surface custom lighting input S. So it's just s.normal. No matching to perimeter intrinsic function dot. Really? Oh, there it fucking is. It's right fucking there. What are you talking about? How do we do a dot product? It's just called dot. Is it because it's not a float 3? This is fun. I'm sure everybody's having a great time. Supli says, the paper seems more or less correct to me. Not sure what's going wrong. Yeah, that's basically what my opinion was. Except for their repeated use of the word sign in functions that are not sign. They have nothing to do with sign. But now I'm having a hard time because I'm trying to re-engineer this setup. And it's not... I mean, it has a whole bunch of values in it that I don't know how to track down. The Mr. Supli, Reganomicon is being annoyed by the IntelliSense lack. Yeah, Mr. Supli says the sign is correct. It's just calculated through a trig identity. I don't see any sign in their actual code. You can take a look. Their actual code has no sign functions in it. The fact that they keep using the word sign and then have 0 actual sign values is incredibly stupid. I'm looking at page, I don't know how to count pages. I'm looking at the actual code near the middle bottom, just below halfway mark, where it says putting it all together, and there's no sign values. In fact, that entire function is the value they label sign. Brilliant. And right now I'm just trying to do the diffuse lighting, but I screwed it up somehow. So the light vector is not called light vector. It's called something else. There it is. But I don't know whether s.normal is in world space or not. This lerp is barfing because it's not being able to translate between... can I do it like that, or will it barf again? Let's find out. The sign is used in the specular component, page 11. No, it isn't. Not unless their secondary function strand specular has sign values in it, and I already did that. It does not. I don't know how to tell page numbers. My reader doesn't have it. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah. Where are you seeing a sign value? Unless it's in the smooth step. Is the smooth step sign related somehow? I mean, it's called sign. The actual value is called sign, but there's no... I'll pull it over here. This is what he's talking about, and this is the value that I'm talking about. It's called sign, th. Square root of 1 minus the square of the dot product. It's not explicitly used. It's derived from the dot product, which is a cosine. I don't think that's... I mean, there is a tangent space thing going on. So in theory, it could be using some trig to get a cosine out of a tangent space multiplication. That actually makes some sense. But it's not what I'm getting when I try and duplicate it. And when I did this exact setup, so I can show you, if we pull open the original hair shader that we've got here. This is page 11 right here, as close as I could get it. So what we've got is... H equals normalize LV, that's this. Light direction and view direction, add and normalize. That's not the right. Fuck, there it is. And then we've got dot th equals the dot product of the world tangent and the thing we just created. And then we've got the sign th. Reganomicon says, what's that node-based shader editor? This is Amplify. Amplify shader editor is the best shader editor available for Unity at the moment. But it's still not perfect. And then we've got the sign th is the square root of 1 minus the square of that dot product. And then at the very end, what we get is the direct attenuation is the smooth step from -1 to 0 of the dot product that we just did. And I've set this to -1 to 0. And then in the last moment, we do the direct attenuation, which is what we just calculated, times the sign th, which we calculated up here. Yeah. Did I get the wrong one? Is that what's going on here? No, that should be correct. Reganomicon says that maybe he'll stop being terrified of shaders. Oh, it's all very easy if you want to do basic shader stuff, but this custom lighting nonsense is just the worst. So the direct attenuation is this smooth step value. This is the direct attenuation. I really wish it would stop popping behind. And then what we do is we return the direct attenuation, which is this value here, times the sine th, which is this value here, raised to a power. So that is exactly what they've written. This is their strand specular function. I don't see any issues with it aside from the fact that it doesn't work. It produces that instead. If you have any kind of insight as to why it's not working, I would love to hear it. Mr. Supley says, how are the tangents of the mesh oriented? That's definitely an issue. I'll show you. If we go over here and switch over to the tangent space shader, this is how they're oriented. So you can see that the tangents are, they're not like always oriented the same way, because I don't know how to force it to do that. But they aren't oriented in a complete garbage way. So the complete garbage result makes no sense. Like here, these tangents are all oriented in a reliable pattern, so we should see a reliable light coming off of them, and we don't. I've tried to do some tangent calculations to try and fix the tangents to make sure that they're all exactly like combed, but I couldn't get it to make any difference. And when we switch over to the actual hair shader, let's see here, when we switch over to this, this is how their hair shader looks, which is, as you can see, not terrible. It's just not good enough for what I want, because their specular component is like shining like the goddamn sun, and the actual elements that look like hair are barely visible at all. This shine up here is crap. This shine here is great. So basically that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get this to, I'm trying to replicate this shader, but remove that element. And unfortunately for me, if we go over to that shader and we actually open it up, whoa, you can label. So I actually didn't realize this was in, didn't realize this was in a shader editor. I think this is an Amplify shader. Yeah, this is an Amplify shader editor. So I'm just a fucking idiot is the problem that we have. Also, what are these? I need these, and I don't know how to make them. Commentary. There's no commentary. How did they add that? How did you add a commentary box? Okay, you hold C. That's fine. So what we've got here is a shader. We're not going to want to save changes to that. We're going to want to duplicate it and take a look here. The paper says he assumes that it's root to tip. Well, I can't make the mesh have tangents oriented root to tip unless someone can tell me how to calculate that. I can override the mesh calculations for tangents, and I've done that in a couple of times. I actually have like a smart tangent calculator here, but these don't have any, there's no way for me to tell it to orient based on the root to tip calculation, because I don't know how to inject that into this flow. I don't know where to get the information as to where is the tip. The closest I can get is I can tell you whether the UV map is increasing or decreasing. But when I tried to make that have an effect, I didn't see any change. And the problem is, of course, that I don't really know how to calculate tangents. I'm mostly doing copies, cut and pastes with small changes here and there. So, I mean, I could sit down and learn how to do all of that. But at the time, I thought I was going to have to create another shader, and I was like, I should just create the shader first. But in this case, it looks like that's not an issue. Aubrey Beardsley is sending me YouTube links. Bitangent should be used to how to paint flow. So Aubrey is like slapping lots of things on me. I don't know whether or not I want to open YouTube videos up while I'm playing stuff. I have no idea if that's going to be any good or not. I can't watch it here, though. How to paint anisotropic maps in Photoshop. So I wouldn't mind painting a custom anisotropic map if I had a shader that could take that data and actually create it and actually create the visual I want. I'll look at that later, I suppose. Mr. Supley says bitangent should be root to tip, cross product between the normal and the tangent, or vice versa. I don't know what part the bitangent has in this. So the tangent calculation that I'm using is the same as Unity's. It's within like 1% of Unity's. I think Unity has a slightly different one, but when I use mine instead of theirs, there's only the tiniest of changes. And there's basically two steps to this function here. One is that we go through all of the triangles and we work out what tangents we have by grabbing the three verts of that triangle and working that out with these values here. And then when we get down here, we look through the vertex count, we grab the normals and the tangents we calculated, and we try and figure it out. So basically, they're summing all of the S-dirs and T-dirs from every triangle for every vert. And then down here, they grab these values, and then they try and get a tangent out of them. When you're saying that you should have a cross product between the normal and the tip, presumably this, the normal and tangent, presumably this is what you're talking about. That's already happening. So I don't know what you would suggest in terms of changing that. Because I don't know whether, the problem is I can't even tell if my tangent space is wrong. It doesn't appear to be wrong because the hair shader that I bought works. It just is really, really bright. So what I might do is shut off the brightness. So is that going to be... I don't know which of these effects is going to be the one which creates that giant bright glow on the back of the head. Here it's registering a local gloss value, and then... So here is a secondary highlight and the main highlight. Those are good. And then here is the base color, and lerped between the two base colors. So that's all fine. And then here is the multiply between the added highlights and this base tone. The base tone is just another lerp. So where is the actual... That's translucency. So this doesn't even use custom lighting. Maybe that's the problem. They're not using custom lighting, which means they're getting an incredibly bright spotlight due to the standard custom lighting model. And then they're just altering the albedo and the translucency to try and get the highlights. So that's the issue here. The material that I bought doesn't override the base lighting model, which means that we get the base lighting model's giant fucking glow. that's not something I can just take out. It's not not quite that simple. But I could do Mr. Supley says, that there is to orient the tangent properly, I believe. Been a while since I've done tangent calculations on my own. Yeah, and I would put more time into it, but I'm not sure that tangents are what's wrong. I don't think that they're wrong. I think that default tangent calculations are not too bad. The only challenge that I have there is that I'm using a bidirectional UV map, but I could force that to either be unidirectional or to have different tangent space calculations just for that specific element, and it would work okay. But that hasn't been a problem so far. The problem is that the main color is just the worst. Now, I know that there is a setting on the basic shader where you can turn off specular highlights. So what I'm doing is I'm looking through here and I'm just checking to see whether or not I can turn off specular highlights. I don't see. Darn. It doesn't look like I can turn off specular highlights here. Damn. Nope. All right, so my choices are limited here. I could just go with this hair, but it looks so awful. I don't think I want to. And obviously, this is like a super basic hair experience. This is not a hair model that really shines. But when I look at my hair in the mirror, and it's roughly this color, it doesn't look anything like that, because the shine, this big, huge fucking band, doesn't exist. It doesn't look like that. And that's the default shine, the default specular shine, I believe. It doesn't respond at any rate. If I try and get rid of it, nothing seems to get rid of it. So this shine here, if we go back up to the hair and we try and modify these values to reduce that shine, none of them will. So if I were to, you know what, let's go ahead and create just a duplicate hair shader for this part, because otherwise I will just destroy this shader and I'll have to recreate it. Duplicate. There we are. So if I were to just bring everything down to 0, just drop down everything, I don't think we'd see a single change. Oh, that's cute. It's not what we're looking for, but it's worth remembering. So the translucency gives us that background glow. By turning that off, we can get a little bit better realism out of this, or a bit less aggressiveness out of it. But this doesn't do anything. This doesn't do anything. This doesn't do anything. This doesn't do anything. This will make it glow, but there is no ambient light, so it doesn't do anything. Here's the shadow, doesn't do anything. The base tone and gloss, I think that the alpha is the gloss, and here you can see that it's directly aligned with the gloss line. So if we bring up the glossiness of the hair, you can see what's going on. There's a light shining down on the face, and this halo is where the light is landing around the edges of the hair. If we bring the gloss down to 0, it's less noticeable, but it's still there. And that's just a tip color changer. Alpha level, that's just how transparent the hair is. That's just changing the color from the base. That's got nothing to do with the glow. Bump power. No, that doesn't change the glow either. But that is interesting. It pushes the glow back. Okay, so metallicity does change it. Maybe the thing I have to do is just take the metallicity down to 0. Let's go ahead and use the other shader again. And let's just take the metallicity right down to 0. So with the metallicity at 0, what we'll get is just the highlights. The main, okay, so the highlights are the secondary pieces that I don't even think we can see them at this angle. If I were to bring it up to bright white, you can see that they're over there. And then this is the other highlight. And you can see that what they do is they create that shimmer that we like that makes the hair look real, this part here. They have nothing to do with that shine that we were getting in the back. Now, for what I've done right here, I've moved both of the highlights to the same position. And the reason for that is because half of my hair goes the other direction. So if you wanted to be realistic, you'd have one of these highlights be pushed back. But if we move these highlights, they move in 2 different directions because I've got my UV maps moving in 2 different directions. You can see that there's like a little, well, that's not the, I guess it probably won't be noticeable since I'm not actually using half of what I thought I would. In my next version of the hair, I'll probably have that work out fine. But there, you can see I've moved them a little bit so that you can see them on this side of the head. And it's starting to look a little bit like hair. The problem is, of course, that the back here that's not how it really does look. Hair never really just falls like that. The coloration is quite wrong. But we can play with it a little bit and have some fun with it here. So the idea is that you want one of these to be yellow or, hair colored, and then the other one is white, because that's how it is in reality. So like that. And that actually doesn't look too bad. So maybe I just needed to just kill the metallicity, but it's not that it's realistic. It's just that it's not terrible, and I think that's probably enough for my concerns. So I just spent like an hour doing math and not getting it to work. I think that it didn't work because it's in the wrong space. If I went back and translated everything into object space, maybe it'd work. I don't really know. But here you can see we're going to have some other problems. One of the problems we're going to have is that the lighting changes depending on the skin tone of the characters. So if you have a character that is blonde and they have very, very dark skin, then the lighting on the blonde hair will be amped up and we'll get this blown out blonde hair. So that means that even if 2 people are blonde, the actual color of their blonde hair is going to have to be changed so that it doesn't get blown out in the camera. Now, in reality, people with very, very brightly colored hair and dark skin, they do have their hair blow out if they take pictures where you can clearly see their face. But the blowout, the way that it blows out, it doesn't look like this. And the reason is because their hair doesn't have this fake shine. Their hair has a more normal shine. So what I could do is I could adjust the highlights down to like just lower the highlights, and it would still feel fairly realistic. Or I could leave the highlights up and add in a camera bloom effect. So here is the camera bloom effect is actually inside of this setup somewhere. Let's just take a look. We should be able to click on it. There it is. So we got the depth of field, but we don't have a bloom. Let's go ahead and add in a bloom. There we are, bloom. And if we take a look at the game for these, if we put in this bloom value, We can bring the intensity up. We're not getting any bloom effect. That's interesting. What's going on here? I don't see anything happening. Is it conflicting with the depth of field? Well, now the depth of field doesn't appear to be having any effect. What's going on here? My guess is that I have to have them both pre-created. So let's go ahead and try that one more time. That should give us at least some bloom. Let's take a look down at the bloom settings. Bloom is on, but I'm not getting any actual bloom here. Depth of field is on. I don't see any changes. Are these not actually taking effect? They should be taking effect. All right, well, let's just do it like looking at it here. I don't believe this will ever work, though. Yeah, this is not going to do anything. So these are the post-process volumes, and in theory, these are being applied. Now, I thought they were being applied. Yeah, you can see that we've got a lot of shadowing in the back here. Okay, so now it's working. What the fuck? Yeah, okay, so now it's working. Not sure what's going on. Okay, so now it's not working. So when I randomize it and the camera moves, it stops working. And that might be because of the range of the post-processing effect. Let's go ahead and do it. It might also be because the hat got turned off. No. Let's go ahead and do it with someone that's not quite so hard to look at. There, that'll do. So for some reason, we're not getting the post effects. If I turn the post effects to is global, it works fine. The problem is we're going to have a lot of different post effects, so we can't do that. What we need to do is have that actually work. And I think the problem is that the box collider is the wrong size, but I don't really know what size it should be. If we take a look at the scene, here is the camera, and you can see that it's right on the edge of the box, so I'm not sure why the box isn't correctly colliding with it. I mean, I can make it larger, but I don't think that's going to help. Oh, I guess it did. Okay. Good for me. So now that we've made the box collider a little bit bigger, that'll work. So we'll go ahead and make it 14, 14, 14. Apparently, when the camera is straight on, it's further away from the object in terms of the box collider, because the box collider is arranged orthogonally. So if you're facing it orthogonally, you're facing it on its shortest axis, if you see what I mean. So that's why that was happening. What an annoyance to have that sort of thing crop up when you're desperately trying to get stuff to work in the first place, right? All right, so here what we've got is a character that has some bloom effects on their too bright hair. If we pop over to the hair shader here, or over to the head, rather, we can adjust how much bloom we want. If we adjust the bloom to be really high, but then also adjust the threshold to be really high, we should be able to get it to error out on just the hair. Like that. So now, let's see whether this continues to work. I mean, aside from the fact that we've got clipping problems because we haven't assigned anything. The hair hasn't been mounted to the head at all, so it's just kind of floating. That's not too bad. It does give them kind of a Vaseline face, though. This part's just awful. I think we're going to have to pay some more attention to layer depth and AOE. AOE my butt. AO. If we take a look at the hair shader, which is up here, I believe that there was the option to take down the masking clip value. And that'll change what shadows the face, but it doesn't change what the hair's internal structure is. If I want to do an AO on the hair itself, there's no map for it. So what I would have to do is use a screen space AO. If we go down into the head, we can turn that screen space AO back on, but it doesn't really help. You can see that it's not affecting the hair at all. So I'm not really sure what to do about that. What I'd really like to do is have it so the hair has ambient occlusion and the rest of the face doesn't. I mean, it's not a bad look. The intensity is a little high, but it's not a terrible look. It's just not affecting the hair at all. You can't see that there's any layering here where the hair has, shadowed areas. One of the things I could do is I could manually put in variations of hair color. So on the actual hair frond map, I could have a darker patch and a brighter patch. Or I could use vertex colors, and I could make vertex colors part of the equation, and paint certain fronds as gray and leave other fronds as white. But either way, this is a very flat appearance. It's definitely better than it was an hour ago, and I know that this wasn't a very exciting journey for anybody because I was just failing at math the whole time. But I'm starting to wind down. I've got some other stuff I want to do that's not related to this, and so if you have any questions, think them up now. I'd like to thank Mr. Soupley for tagging along, and Aubrey Beardsley, who gave me a lot of links to things I'll have to read later about whether or not I can create a good map. The key here is that I'm not sure whether or not I can follow this same process. I'll have to look into it. I'm still not satisfied with how this hair looks. It looks better than it did an hour ago, though, and it's not quite how I want it to be, but it's better than it was. So here, for example, is a darker character, and presumably they would rarely, if ever, have stark white hair, but I don't want them to look bad with hair that's too bright. So if we take a look at the hair here, we have a white gray underlying map. The hair color is determined 100% by these sliders here. So if we were to change this hair color down to a darker color, like so, you can see we're not really very realistic anymore because our highlight strengths are independent of that. So if we bring the highlights down as well, like that, so when I do hair color changes, I'm going to have to change 4 colors. That's going to be a bit of a challenge, but I think I'm up to it. If we wanted to, we could change the bump power a little bit, but you can see how that produces a strange lensing effect. Not sure. I think that might be the fault of the post effect rather than anything else. Either way, we don't want to get it to be too powerful, so that seems about right. Aubrey wants more faces. He seems to be a fan of my face generator. But you can see the hair is not keeping up with the faces. If we're going to generate more faces, I'll turn the hat back on. Or I could mount the hair onto the head in the same way that the hat is. Just duplicate it and put it down here. Hide that. Now the hair might keep up a little bit better. It's just rough bound to one bone. It's not correctly morphing along, but you can see that at least the hair is sort of vaguely keeping up. The depth of field effect is really exaggerated. Let's take a look here. Hair Loss Simulator 2019. Let's just tweak, while we've got this open, let's tweak the depth of field. It's a little bit aggressive. Here's our depth of field effect. And what we can do is change the focus to be a little bit less sudden. I don't remember which of these does that, though. You can see that really obvious line where it actually hits. What was the value at? 50? I think that it's probably best at maybe 30 or 40. Let's try 40. That might be a flaw in the hair. I guess that's a flaw in the hair. I have to make the hair better. That's fine. I'll figure it all out. There's a fat guy. Here's a wide guy. Here's a smarmy guy. Still, this isn't really working for me over here. I have to think about what to do about that. A lot of these faces are still in need of tweaking. We've got a couple of basic setups for how these faces get generated, but they're still very rough. I did a video on The Sims yesterday, which is why I didn't upload any deep dives on Heaven's Vault. But they have some approaches that are similar to what I'm doing, but more polished, and I'm thinking that maybe I'll implement some of that. Well, I guess what I'll do is take some screenshots and finish up with a couple of basic screenshots here. Try not to take any pictures of people from the exact same angle. There we are. We'll get some goofballs. And some scary folks. Oh, that's really awful. Definitely need a little bit more tweaking here and there. Yeah, the hair is not working out in terms of the shadow casting. That's fine. Hair still needs work, but we're starting to get there. Indie dev. There we go. All right, well, thanks for hanging out with me. I will see you on Saturday if you'd like to see me then, or next Wednesday. Have a good day.